Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast, which we're now calling Legal Insanity. And there's been some developments today in the Alec Baldwin shooting, and we just happened to have this scheduled for today, so we might as well go into it. So first of all, he pled not guilty. So they announced the charges a few weeks ago, but for some reason they delayed filing the actual charges, but they were filed, and today he entered an appearance and was granted release on his personal recognizance. That's not unusual for people to get put on bail with no cash money if they have ties to the community and you're sure they're going to show up for court. And typical conditions for pretrial release, he can't have alcohol, can't have a firearm, and he can't talk to witnesses about the crime. So Dave wanted to mention that they downgraded the charges that we discussed last time. So with the two kinds of manslaughter, the involuntary manslaughter with the firearm enhancement would have been a 5-year penalty, but there's been some developments on that. And Dave, you want to go into that?
I certainly do. So this firearm enhancement, the charge that they were using here for both Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reed was based on an amended statute after the shooting, which changed the penalty from 3 to 5 years. But more important, the original law said that the gun had to be brandished, and brandished was defined as an intent to intimidate or injure a person, and the prosecution here has never said that this was intentional. They've said that it was gross negligence. And at the point in 2022 when the law was changed, it was changed to discharged, which is of course different from, intending to do something. So you can't, there's an ex post facto problem. Under the Constitution, you cannot charge someone with a crime for a law that became a crime after the actual act. So this is blatantly unconstitutional. Baldwin filed to have the charge dismissed, and the judge didn't even have to hear it. Instead, the prosecution said, "Okay, we're going to we're going to get rid of the firearm enhancement," and they said they did it to avoid further litigious distractions by Baldwin and his attorney. But again, this is pretty blatant. I don't know how they thought they'd get away with it, because really, what we have here are like two possibilities, right? One, they didn't care that they were going to try to apply. I should make clear, when it comes to unconstitutional laws, you can have a law that's just unconstitutional on its face, always unconstitutional, or as unconstitutional as applied in the circumstance. This law is not unconstitutional on its face. It's unconstitutional as applied here because the criminal act, the alleged criminal act, took place before the law was in effect. And it's a very simple legal principle. So either they just didn't care, they thought they'd get away with it. I don't know how they thought they'd get away with it. They're not going to get away with it with any lawyer, including someone argued with me, well, Alec Baldwin has money, they probably could get away with it with a less wealthy defendant. No, a public defender is going to make the same argument. You don't need resources. You just need to file a motion. A law student could file this motion. And not only that, I also want to add,
before you go further, the brandishing thing for people that don't understand, the brandishing with an intent to intimidate. So if you and I were in an argument and I pulled out a gun and told you to get out of here, and I was threatening you with it, and then it went off and I didn't intend to, that's brandishing. Or if I was shooting at your feet like dance, cowboy dance, and then I accidentally shot the floor and it bounced up and hit you and killed you, that under the old statute would have been enough. But clearly what he was doing in the context of a movie, he wasn't trying to scare the person behind the screen. He wasn't trying to intimidate them. He wasn't brandishing, right? So under the old statute, right. But the change in the statute, if that had happened today, it might be enough to get him the 5 years, but the change to the statute happened after the death, and you can't charge somebody with a statute that didn't exist at the time they committed the crime. And that's the constitutional issue.
That is the ex post facto issue. So
Right.
now, so this charge is gone in both the case of Baldwin and Gutierrez-Reed. But one thing I also wanted to note was in the case of Gutierrez-Reed, it should never have been regardless of the ex post facto issue. Gutierrez-Reed, it's not alleged ever brandished a gun. It's not even alleged she discharged the gun. What she's alleged to have done is not check the gun. So this charge should never have been applied to her in the first place. But the bottom line now is that those two charges are out. Both Gutierrez-Reed and Alec Baldwin now face a maximum of 1.5 years under the involuntary manslaughter statute. And that's under the first part of the statute, which is just ordinary negligence. If I can get it here, I think I wrote it down. The commission of an unlawful act not amounting to a felony. That's ordinary negligence. That's in Baldwin's case, it's going to be the negligent handling of a firearm. Maybe that's also the Gutierrez-Reed case. Baldwin, as Peter mentioned, pled not guilty today. I believe, according to Gutierrez-Reed's lawyers, she's going to plead not guilty tomorrow. But again, getting back to the DA's office here, either they did not care that they were trying to apply a law unconstitutionally, or they were totally incompetent and didn't recognize this very simple legal, really simple legal issue. This is not something that should be missed by anyone. So
I have a third.
You have a third possibility. I'll listen to it.
So the person that they appointed as the special prosecutor who actually filed these charges was a former prosecutor who is now a politician in the New Mexico Legislature.
Andrea Reed.
Right. So she would have been in the legislature when they passed this law. And so she obviously knows this law exists. And I think the reason she charged under this thing is because she wanted to be in the paper saying these two people can go to jail for 5 years for this horrible thing that he did and she had some responsibility for. And this gets her in front of the cameras. And, you know, she runs for office again. And, you know, she's the tough on crime prosecutor. And if this came out, obviously, because, you know, any defense attorney would find out that this law was passed after, and then they do away with the charges, which she did, she can make her press release, which she did, saying like, oh, you know, we're not going to bother arguing with these high-priced New York lawyers and, you know, to help them get billable hours, you know, we're just going to drop this. She had no case on the enhancement. So, but, you know, she's claiming to drop it to move the case along. But, you know, next time she's in the legislature, she could say like, oh, you know, I'm running again and I'm going to close these crime loopholes that people like Alec Baldwin used to get away with killing people. And she's going to use that to further her political career. That's a third option. I'm not saying that's what happened.
I mean,
that's a third option.
Criminals like Alec Baldwin, this is an accident. I mean, yes, granted,
you know what?
Quote unquote a crime, but no one did anything on purpose here. I don't know what kind of career you're going to build on. Oh, he got away with. He's not getting away with anything. 5 years is a draconian sentence. You're assuming that the public is on board with this. I mean, I just don't understand.
Mexico is a very red state.
Wait, hang on 1 second. You don't think a judge is going to react negatively to this? Not only this, we haven't even gotten to Andrea Reed and the blatant unconstitutionality of her appointment here. So you don't think a judge is going to step in? If I'm a judge, you know what I'm going to say? I'll tell you exactly what I would say here. After this, and we'll talk about the Reed appointment, I would say, you know what? I'm going to recommend very strongly to the DA's office that you plead out here, because you know what? That's going to happen. Otherwise, I'm going to dismiss this with prejudice for both of them. Get the hell out of this courtroom. This is such a bad faith prosecution. It's unbelievable. So the idea that they're going to build a political career on something where and I know the judges are also elected in New Mexico, but I don't think anyone is, I mean, this is an accident. I don't understand the calculations here.
I think if you're no longer a prosecutor and now you're in the New Mexico legislature, you have political ambitions and you've already committed to that. I don't care what the judge says. You know, whatever they do to you, they toss the case out. You're just going to go back, and when you're running for office next time, you could say like, hey, I'm going to put me back in. I'm going to close these loopholes that let people like him get away. And I agree it was an accident. I don't think he intended to have anyone die. I don't think the armorer had any intention for anyone to die. I don't think the
even the
assistant
DA
director had
side
any
arguing that
intention
it was
to
on
die.
purpose.
It was a horrible accident, but if you saw the things that the prosecutor said, she brought politics into it, because she said, like, it's offensive that they're going to try to disqualify me just because I'm a conservative Republican and he's a liberal Democrat from New York. Doesn't mean that he won't get a fair trial here. Like, why even bring that up? Just say, like, everyone gets a fair trial in New Mexico. The reason that she's bringing up politics is because she, in my opinion, is probably got into office, and this is the thing she wants to hang her hat on. She wants to be a tough on crime politician. She wants to run for Senate. She wants to run for the governor's mansion, whatever she wants to do. And I think this is a way to get her in front of camera, just like Rudy Giuliani used to do. Rudy Giuliani made his whole career out of getting in front of a camera and just indicting everyone he could. And some of them stuck and some of them didn't, but it didn't really matter, because it got him to be mayor of New York. It got him to run for president. It got him on Fox News. It got him partner at a big law firm. He got on that pony and he rode it all the way home. And then this prosecutor, what's her name? Maybe
Mary
she's
Carmack,
thinking, hey, I can write that.
Wait, the special prosecutor is Andrea Reeb, and the DA is Mary Carmack Always.
Okay, so the special
Carmack Always game then.
Right, I'm talking about the special prosecutor who's in the
also a legislator.
Okay, so we were talking about the special prosecutor. So there was another motion that Baldwin filed to have her removed on some grounds dealing with the New Mexico Constitution. And do you want to go into that?
I will certainly go into this. Okay, so here's the deal with Andrea Reeb. Andrea Reeb was appointed, she was named special prosecutor in August by the DA, Mary Carmack Altwies. And this was after Reeb had secured the GOP nomination for a state representative. And she ended up winning that in November. So Reeb is a special prosecutor in this case, while also serving as a state representative. So Baldwin argues that this violates Article 3 of the New Mexico Constitution. And here's one thing I want to note. Typically, you can have, you look up case law, you find precedent. There's nothing out there on this because this is so flagrant. No one's ever tried anything like this. Because if you want to hear Article 3 of the New Mexico Constitution, here's Article 3, Section 1. The powers of the government of this state are divided into 3 distinct departments: the legislative, executive, and judicial, and no person or collection of persons charged with the exercise of powers properly belonging to one of these departments shall exercise any powers properly belonging to either of the others. So every argument from the DA that tries to paint Baldwin's attorneys as litigious, as trying to create billable hours, it's such a red herring. We have 2 blatantly illegal, unlawful attempts to prosecute these people here. One was based on an ex post facto application of a law, unconstitutional. 2, we have a special prosecutor here it's clearly in violation on its face of the New Mexico state constitution. Nobody's ever even tried to do something like this in the past. So at this point, that's why I say, as a judge, I would just go to the DA and I would tell them, you plead out here. It's really in your interest to plead out here, because this is not going to go well if you don't. And if they don't plead out, and I mean no time, because I don't even think anyone should be doing time in this, then I'm as a judge, I'm dismissing the charges with prejudice. That means the defendants are not getting charged again. I'm sending them on their way. This is such a bad faith prosecution. I would rule 11 the DA. If not, I don't know what you could do to the legislator. I mean, she's acting as a special prosecutor. You could probably sanction her too. She's clearly, I would get them disbarred. This is like clearly a bad faith prosecution.
There's a couple of interesting things here. One, it's pretty common for prosecutors to overcharge something to get you to plead to something lesser.
No,
But
this is not overcharging. This is an unconstitutional application of law. There's a difference. Don't act like this is.
oh, sure.
Like,
And I was going to say that, like,
I saw this all the time. I never saw anything like this.
Yes.
When I was a clerk, never saw anything like this. I never saw anyone try to appoint a special prosecutor in violation of the face of a constitution. I've never seen that. So this is not.
Sure. And
not,
it's pretty. It's pretty outrageous that with an ex post facto law that was passed after the crime happened. But also, if this person is a legislator, she would have been there voting on that law. And so it's not like she could say, like, oh, I didn't know, the old version of the law was different. You're the one who voted on it.
It doesn't even,
and also, it's pretty clear that you can't, from the New Mexico Constitution, have somebody in the legislature usurp and do something that belongs to the judicial branch. And trying cases is something that belongs in the judicial branch. And if you think this is something that is
executive, it's the executive branch. It's the executive. What? It's the executive branch.
Oh, sorry, the executive. Right. The prosecutor is the executive branch. But the Constitution says you can't do anything that belongs to the executive or the judicial branch, correct?
Because one can't do anything that belongs to the other. All three branches, you can't cross. It's the separation of powers issue. It's right on its face.
Right. And if anyone thinks that this is remotely okay, imagine if the governor was, let's say he was a Republican and then the legislature was Democrats. Would you be okay if they appointed a prosecutor and a judge from the legislature to try the governor? And if you think like, no, that is not okay, then this is not okay either, because there's a reason that the Constitution of New Mexico had separated these three branches and said, one can't overlap the other because those balances are there for a reason. And it's the same reason that when you have sentencing guidelines, a judge can't overrule that because those are passed by the Congress, and you're usurping the power of the legislature if you try to change the law. So that's my rant on that. But clearly this is unconstitutional, and it's so unconstitutional that there isn't even a case in New Mexico that deals with this, because in the hundreds of years this has been a state, no one's even tried something so crazy.
I'm actually blown away by this. And look, I know everyone's turning this into a political issue, like everything in this country, everything becomes politics. Alec Baldwin, he's a liberal, let's get him. I don't really care. You can listen to our last episode. I was way more open to people being charged in this case and this, seeing how things play out. But what I'm calling this is a bad faith prosecution. I think the judge should slap down this DA, should tell them, you're going to settle this. You're going to plea out, or it's not going to work out well for you. And that's going to, and then, okay, we're going to have the politics play out, and then they'll go back, and what's her name? Reeb is going to go and say, look, the judge let this criminal go. And then they're going to build a political career on having Baldwin and Gutierrez-Reed having gotten away with the crime of the century here. I don't think they're going to be able to do that anyway. I think they're really misjudging, no pun intended, or I don't think it's a good play trying to build a career on a tragic accident, and right, and not overcharging, trying to unconstitutionally go after two defendants. And Gutierrez, you know what? The overcharge that's normal is the overcharge with Gutierrez-Reed, where she didn't even, she didn't brandish the weapon, she didn't discharge the weapon. That's an overcharge where you could say, okay, it still doesn't make sense because there's no way to prove the elements there. But that's something where you don't have to go and say, really, this is, unconscionable. But when you start talking about ex post facto application of a draconian penalty in this case, 5 years for anyone here, they should not be going away for 5 years. So they with a law that didn't even apply at the time of the shooting. And then
the way that would make sense is in a world where we have time machines, that you could be charged with a crime that didn't exist when you committed it. And neither Gutierrez-Reed nor Baldwin have a criminal record as far as I know. So if 19 months is the maximum, I'm sure if they get any jail time, which I seriously doubt, because this seems like an accident. I don't think it'll be much, especially considering the overreaching of the prosecutor and the special prosecutor, and bringing somebody down from the legislature who's made these inflammatory statements about the defendant on TV. And I have to say something, Dave. The turnaround you made is amazing, because when I suggested that they could be overcharging this because for political motivations, and I told you in New York, we used to, when Rudy Giuliani was a prosecutor,
we used Giuliani. Say, my father dealt with Giuliani.
The dangerous place in New York wasn't the South Bronx. It was standing between Rudy Giuliani and a TV camera, because he'll fucking knock you over, and you were like, come on, like they wouldn't try to put a guy in jail and this woman who just made an accident just for political points.
Sorry for my belief in humanity, which I thought I was completely cynical. I guess I wasn't cynical enough.
Well, you know what? I interned on Capitol Hill, and I saw all the shitty people there in office and the ones that were working there that wanted to be in office, and I have no more faith in humanity.
Speaking of shitty people, can I just jump to the end really quickly? Because can we just bring up Rust is continuing production? And can I just read the statement? Can I read the statement? Because everyone involved in this thing must be the shittiest. Everyone involved here sucks as a human being. I'm fairly certain.
Yes.
So here we go.
So yesterday, I don't know, they made an announcement, and you would think that after this movie where somebody died, they would just say, you know what, let's hang this up. Let's not go any further. But there's millions of dollars invested in this, and Alec Baldwin, who is going on trial, has agreed to finish the movie, and they're going to go forward with this. And they released the cringiest statement I ever heard. If you want to go ahead and read it.
This is real. Okay? The dedication and passion of the entire Rust production team to honor Helena's vision has deeply moved us. We've learned so much about Helena as a friend and colleague, the depth of her artistry, the lasting impact she had on so many. We are honored to play a role in the realization of her vision and to carry forward her inspiring legacy through championing this film. I don't even know what to say.
So not only are they saying, despite the fact that she died on the set, that they're going to go through with this, despite that, they're saying that in her honor.
She'd want us to do it. She'd want us to complete this.
Want us to do it. She's dead. She doesn't want anything, I can't believe they're going through with this.
I can't believe that statement.
Yeah. I will not watch this film. That statement is completely cringe.
Oh my God. My jaw has just been dropping this entire week as we've been preparing for this, one after another. I don't know. So that's why I've concluded that everyone involved in the production of this movie, everyone involved in the prosecution of the alleged criminals, everyone here just seems like reprehensible people. I mean, Alec Baldwin, you would. I don't know. I don't want to be too judgy, but like,
I think he's more the producer than the actor. Yeah, he produced the movie. He hired the people. I think that's his culpability. As an actor, I don't think they would have enough to charge him. But as a producer, sure. I think the middle guy, the one who took the gun from the cart.
I'm not even. I'm talking about Baldwin's decision to continue with the movie, like as an actor.
Oh right, yeah.
That's what I'm not talking. Forget. We've already covered. Yeah. I mean, they're going to have, and I don't think it's ever going to actually go to trial. But I'm talking about Baldwin's decision to say, "Okay, I want to finish this movie now." I don't know about
right.
That.
I don't know how much money he's got tied up in it, but that is completely horrible. And I don't know if there's something else. Like he announced recently also that he's suing the production, and I don't know what his theory is there. And could this be a race judicata thing?
No, well, no, certainly not, because they're actually because the civil trial is a different standard as compared to the criminal, which was one thing I was wondering is why he didn't wait till after the criminal trial, because it could be a res judicata after the criminal trial because it's the higher standard. You know,
right. So for those that don't know, res judicata is this concept that if something's already been litigated, you can't litigate it again. So if they're suing Baldwin for this death and he's been convicted in a criminal trial, the standard of proof is higher in a criminal trial than in a civil trial. He can't say, no, I wasn't liable, because that's already been litigated and decided. And so what I thought maybe with regard to this litigation where he's suing the production company is if somebody's suing him and he's got a judgment against the production company, maybe he can say, this has already been litigated and the production company is responsible.
I think that makes sense, because this is actually a cross complaint, because he's been named as a defendant in the script supervisor has sued Alec Baldwin and others claiming emotional distress. So he filed a cross complaint here against Gutierrez Reed, against Halls, against Zachary, the props master, and also against the supplier, Kenny. So he's alleging that negligence on their part. I think it's a colorable claim on his part, even if he's to blame for not having, whether as an actor he should have checked too, and as a producer, if they were responsible for handing him a loaded weapon when it shouldn't have been loaded, I do think that he's got a claim here against probably all of them.
Right, and if you're suing somebody, you generally want to sue the person with the deepest pockets, because if Dave and I get sued for something and I've got more money, but he's more responsible for the accident, when the judgment comes out, $10 million, Dave can say, like, I've got no money. I'm sitting here in a wife beater t-shirt. And then they'll say, okay, Dave pays 5 and Pete pays 5. They say, like, okay, Dave, you don't have your half. Pete, you pay both halves.
Joint and several liability. Then Pete's got to go after me. Yeah.
Right. So, each person is responsible for the whole thing. So if they say the production company is 50% liable and Baldwin is 50% liable, and this was a low budget film that had no money, then they say, okay, we can't collect from this production company, so Baldwin, you have to pay the whole thing. And I think that's why you're saying he's suing them back to try to shift the blame back onto them.
I think that makes sense too. And I don't think it's unreasonable on his part. I mean, yeah, we should also, I think we made clear in the last one, you can have lots of people who are to blame for the tragedy, and Baldwin could be to blame. And I think certainly like we were debating it a little with someone on the comment section, Gutierrez Reed's culpability, which I think is pretty obvious. And if you listen to her,
I still don't have a clear explanation of how live rounds got on set. There should never be live rounds on the set. And there was talk that the extras were plinking, shooting, practicing between scenes with live rounds, and that should never be the case. Right before the shooting, everything is up in the safe, but she said the ammo. What was that?
Is that certain?
I haven't found any confirmation of that.
Yeah, I mean,
and then with the ammo out, like it was on the tray apparently right before the shooting. So I don't know why it was there. And I don't know, the guy who pled guilty, the guy who took the gun from the tray that Gutierrez Reed had set up and took it to Baldwin, he didn't check to make sure that there were blanks in there, and he pled guilty already. She says, I think she had put 3 dummy rounds, not blanks, sorry. Dummy rounds, which look like real bullets, but they don't fire at all. Blanks don't look like bullets, but they fire and they make the stuff go out. She said she put 3 dummy rounds in there. He didn't check. Apparently there were 4 rounds in there, and one of them was a live round. I still haven't heard a good explanation of how a live round got on the set. She seems to be saying the guy who sold her the bullets sold her some dummy rounds that were live. But when we did the last video and I showed you the difference between a dummy round and a live round, there's a way you can tell if you look at the primer, it's been indented because it's been shot. And I'm actually going to show you how you make a dummy round. And I looked into this after the Brandon Lee shooting on the Crow, because I actually met Brandon Lee, and I was curious about what happened. So the way you make a round, a dummy round, pretend this is a real bullet, right? You take this off, you take the bullet off, right? And then it's filled with gunpowder, and on the bottom is a primer. You pour the gunpowder out like this, right? Now it's got no gunpowder in. You put this in a gun, and then you fire the primer. Now the primer's been no gunpowder, no primer. Then you take a BB and you put it inside, and then you put the bullet on top. So now if you have to do a close-up of somebody loading the gun, it looks like a real bullet. But if you turn it over, you'll see that the primer's been indented because it's been fired. And if you shake it, you hear it's got a BB in it, right? And so either she somehow didn't check the bullets and didn't notice that there wasn't a BB in there. Somebody put a live bullet in there after she had loaded it. Somehow live bullets got mixed in with the dummy rounds. Something happened, but there should never have been a live bullet anywhere on the set. And the live rounds got mixed up with the dummy round, and somebody's dead. And this trial is going to go on, but the facts keep changing, the law keeps changing.
I don't know if the trial's going to go on. I still don't think the trial is going to go on. But we'll see.
I think they got the guy in the middle, the assistant director who took the gun and gave it to Baldwin without checking. They got him to plead, and I think they were trying to get, my guess is Gutierrez Reed, by threatening her with this 5-year thing, to also plead so they can have them both pointing at Baldwin, who's got the high-powered lawyers. Now that they've taken this 5-year enhancement off the case, and now you're down to 19 months.
18
I think it's
months.
likely.
You said it's 18 months.
18 months, yeah, 18 months. I think it's less likely that she'll plead now. 18 months is the most. She doesn't have a criminal record, and it's unclear. I still haven't heard how the live round got into the set. If she was taking live rounds and making dummies by emptying out the gunpowder and firing them and putting them back together, and she didn't somehow do it correctly, that's okay. But if the guy who sold the ammo, and you had his name last time, or if it was one of the extras who were allegedly target practicing with their guns, somehow got a live round in there, I don't see how she can get anywhere near the maximum. And usually if it's a horrible accident like this, like, why not probation? I know politicians like to try high profile cases, but I don't know. This one bothers me.
It bothers me a lot, and I think maybe I'm wrong about this too. I think it's going to end up bothering the judge. So, and that's why I don't think this is going to go too much further, because it's so clearly what I'm calling, it's bad faith. It's a bad faith prosecution. Why allow it to go on in the way it is? Why not force them to go and plea it out? And say, you can essentially force them to, because look, you can dismiss these charges with prejudice and send them on their way. And you're not sending criminals out. You're not putting people back on the street who are, going to commit more crimes. These are people that, it's a terrible accident. It's horrible. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be charged, because I think, there should be justice for Helena, and I think her family wants to see it through too. But I don't know if her family, if you said you want to see them go serve prison time, I'm not sure that that's what they're seeking. I know that that's what this special prosecutor / legislator is seeking, Andrea Reed, apparently the DA as well. But I don't think it's going to serve their benefit, the games they've played at this point, because I just don't see a judge looking at that and not responding the same way we have. Like, what are you doing here? How did this happen? And then they go out in public, and not only that, they dissemble in public. Oh, we're gonna drop the charges because we don't want to go through the hours of litigation over this. Yeah. What are you talking about? No, you're dropping it because it's so blatantly unconstitutional. You're dropping it because the judge is gonna smack you down if you go in front of a judge with this.
Well, yeah, and they said the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, which is, I know these high-priced New York law firms want to get more billable hours, but we're not going going to give that to them. We're just going to drop this.
We're just gonna.
It's like, well, you didn't do that because you're trying to keep them from making their billable quota. You did this. You
Created
dropped this
billable
because
hours in the first place by charging an unconstitutional charge. You gave them the billable hours to begin with. If you didn't give them the charge,
Right.
they wouldn't have had to do that work.
So there's another aspect of this case which I thought was kind of interesting, and we sort of bickered a little about this. The woman who died, Helena, I forget her last name.
Hutchins. Helena Hutchins.
Hutchins, yeah. Her husband already settled with the production company.
He's the executive producer. He wrote that statement. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
He did not write that statement. Wait, let's make sure. He did not write that statement.
No, that statement was so cringe. But yeah, I don't think he had anything to do with it. But he did settle with the production company because, I mean, it was pretty clear that there was, if not criminal, there was civil negligence involved, and that's why she's dead. There wasn't a medic on the set. You know, it was far away. She had to be helicoptered to the hospital. So he already settled. But there's an attorney who I'm not going to name because I don't like her.
Gloria Allred.
She's very famous for
Gloria Allred.
Wearing a red suit and also getting in front of any camera that's on. So, you know, if you're ever filming on the mall or something, make sure your camera has a red light because she's going to jump in front and photobomb because, you know, she just wants to get in front of every camera, and she's involved in a lot of cases that are in the news. And she is suing Baldwin and the production company, not on behalf of the widower, but on behalf of the dead woman's family over in Ukraine.
Parents and siblings.
Parents and siblings, yeah. And normally you wouldn't be able to do this. So, you know, if someone gets into a car accident and kills my brother, I'd be very upset. And his kids can sue the guy. His wife can sue the guy, but I'm his brother. I can't sue him because the law is very pragmatic about this, and it cares about money. So, you know, lost wages, things like that, support for the family. That's why the family gets that. Me being upset, that doesn't get me anything. So her family, she's trying to make an interesting argument. She's trying to say that she said that she was going to bring them over, or, you know, she liked to send them money. And so now that source of money has disappeared. And
I think it's a little more than that.
What?
The argument is that the application in New Mexico allows for loss of consortium for family members, like parents and
Right.
siblings. I mean, that's
and loss of consortium is usually only for married couples. So
but if New Mexico allows it for parents and siblings, the only difference we had was that you found it outrageous that the parents and siblings would want to sue because they're in the Ukraine. And I said, it's still the parents and siblings. What's geographic proximity matter? They've lost a daughter. No. They've lost a sibling. I mean, to me,
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I'm sure they're upset, and I would be too.
Right?
But I've never heard of loss of consortium being applied to anyone but the spouse. And the reason loss of consortium exists, I can't even say
clearly it has been. It is in states like Mexico where they allow it. I mean, that's.
No, but let's say that, you know, you get into a car accident and your wife is killed and she was a homemaker. She wasn't working. If the law only said you can recover for monetary damages, she could sue if you died because you were the breadwinner, but you can't sue if she died because, you know, she wasn't working. That doesn't seem fair. So that's where loss of consortium comes in, and you can sue for that loss because you don't have a wife anymore. But, you know, I've never, and maybe New Mexico is different in this regard, but I've never heard of a family member, a sibling, a mother, a father, anyone but someone dependent on that person for being able to sue for loss of consortium. She says that the law is different in New Mexico, and if that is,
it is Gloria Allred. So, like, you know, I have not researched the law. So if she's wrong, she's wrong. But I would say, if the law allows for it, and this took place in New Mexico, Gloria Allred is clearly exploiting it. But I don't have an issue with family members that are parents and siblings. I think Their loss is great, no matter what, obviously.
If she was, providing for them or had a connection with them and the law allows this, that's fine. Let them have whatever they can get. But like I said, I've never heard of this. When we learned about this in law school, which I feel like was yesterday, but was a pretty long time ago. Like I've never heard of loss of consortium other than with a spouse.
Well, I got to tell you, I've never heard of loss of consortium really since law school. So that's what I would say. My response there is I really haven't heard of it. So it's not like I've greatly researched the area. So I can't say one way or the other. That's what I would say. I don't think I've actually thought about loss of consortium since law school. So
you know what? I have a friend who had a case where this came up, loss of consortium, and the wife had an accident.
So you are the expert in the area. So I will.
The husband, she sued for physical damages and injuries, and he sued also for loss of consortium. And he was in his 80s and in a wheelchair and whatever. And my friend had to cross-examine this guy, not cross-examine, but during the deposition, because loss of consortium usually means that you can't have sex anymore because,
it's more than
and
that.
she was
It's more than that.
well, how often do you guys do it anyway? And he was like, I don't know, every few months. So she's like, so 3 times a year? You're trying to sue that? And she felt bad arguing for that. And I said, that sounds horrible. And she's like, oh, there's this thing in law. It's called the worthless wife. And you can't, if you're suing for loss of consortium, then that's a defense. It's like the worthless wife. It's like, well, you're saying that you can't have sex and that she doesn't clean up the house and do it. It's like, well, how much did she do that before? And if it wasn't much, then you can't get much. I don't know. But that's the only time outside of law school I've ever heard of loss of consortium.
That's like the defamation argument, or in a defamation claim, you always have to prove injury to reputation. So that was always my first response. Your reputation is so low, I could not have damaged it.
Exactly. I'm trying to think of a person, but I don't want to get sued. But yeah, there's a lot of people that you couldn't sue for defamation because they opinion of them
is already so. I'm like, what I said about you actually raised your rep.
Yeah. So that's the only other legal thing I can think of with regard to this case. I'm sure there'll be some updates because the prosecution has not dropped the willingness to have the legislator serve as a special prosecutor. And they've actually filed, I looked it up today, they filed for a request for a time extension because they want to have more time to argue this, that she should still be allowed to serve as a special prosecutor. So she's not dropping this. She's going forward. And she wants more time because, as you said, there's no cases that cover this in New Mexico that we found because this is so outrageous that no one has ever tried this. So apparently they need more time to try to get together a coherent legal theory about why someone in the legislature should be able to usurp a power that's reserved to the executive branch when it says in the Constitution,
in its text, you don't need an interpretation. That's something else to point out. There's constitutional interpretation. You get to what these things mean. Here, it's quite clear what it means. Anyone could tell you. It's on its face. It's unambiguous. You don't even need case law. Again, a judge is going to look at this and I think get livid. I can't see any other response to the both of these things together. Either one individually, I'd still be freaking out, but together.
Well, her and her office's claim, and this isn't an illegal filing, but this is what they've said to the press, I thought is kind of humble bragging. And she said that, this is an important case and they need the very best prosecutor that they can get because, they have all these high-priced lawyers from New York and California defending this big shot. So they pulled her out of the legislature because she's a hired gun. She's the best in New Mexico. And
you can ignore the Constitution?
I have a feeling she's telling people to say that because I don't think anyone goes around saying that. Like, who says that? But yeah, so that's her.
Who goes around saying, I need help here?
You should be allowed to proceed because this case is so important that they need the best, and I'm the best.
I'm not the best.
There you go.
according to the
Everyone
DA.
who works in that office is not. So, screw you guys.
And this case is so important, we
Yeah.
don't really have to pay attention to what the Constitution says.
Yeah, right. This case is more important than the Constitution.
Is that your legal argument? I can't even.
That's not my argument. That's her argument.
No, not you. Her.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the argument. And she needs more time to find cases that'll back that up, because she's filed for in the court. If you go to the New Mexico state website where they have the legal filings, she's filed for an extension because she needs more time to make this argument. Have all the time you want.
There's no legal argument here. She's got
right.
nothing to stand on. Like, there's nothing she can say except, "I'm sorry." That would actually be helpful. "I'm sorry. I overstepped my bounds. I lost my mind."
Yeah. Well, if she's the best they have, and she made the original argument that, this ex post facto law, which I think she was in the legislature when they passed it, that you can charge somebody with that. If that's the best legal mind that they have, they need to start hiring more people. So it's scary, but
I'm pretty sure she was not in the legislature when it was passed. I think she just got elected, which means she just took office in January.
So if she wants to resign from her elected position, that's a different story. But I don't think you can ride both those horses.
Yeah, clearly both. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, this is tangentially related, but I was curious and I looked up what the plot of Rust was about. And you're not going to believe this, but Alec Baldwin's character Rust, his son, who's 13 or something, is wrongfully convicted of killing somebody, and Alec Baldwin has to go bust him out of prison and escape these marshals that are chasing him and trying to bring him to justice. So this is so weird that, one, this was the plot, and two, as I said, this was a low budget movie, and people were complaining about cutting corners. And apparently this guy that has already pled guilty, the one who took the gun from Gutierrez Reed and gave it to Baldwin, on the previous movie, Hall, yeah. He had been fired apparently from a previous movie set for accidentally discharging a weapon where somebody was injured. And it wasn't live rounds, but I think he thought it was a dummy round, and it was a blank, and it went off near somebody's ear. And so fired from a previous gig for that, and then he's working on this. So many things went wrong here, but the fact that rather than saying, you know what, we lost this money, let's go on with our lives and have some dignity, leave this thing to never be made, and that's the way you should honor this poor woman who died. They're going to keep making the movie with the same actors, and they came out with the cringiest statement I've ever heard, saying that not only are we going to keep doing this, but we're doing it in her honor.
Poor Helena. She'd want us to do this. Her vision. This was her vision,
Oh my God. So cringe.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Well, I don't know on this, but if you guys have any comments, and there were so many comments about how we don't know anything about guns, we don't know anything about movies, we don't know anything about the law.
No one said we don't know anything about movies.
Dave needs to put out a shirt. I got a couple of people insulting me in the last one, so it's not all you this time.
Thankfully, I mean, we got to distribute this evenly at some point.
Yeah.
The shirt comments seem to have slowed down, but then one popped back up. But it was just a troll.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
What can you do?
And people say that we don't know anything about guns. We probably know less about guns than a lot of the people.
I don't know anything about guns.
All right. I've owned guns. The first gun I bought was in 1995. I've owned 3 guns, and the first gun I shot was when I was 7. So it's not like I never fired a gun. So my uncle was a police officer in Argentina, and he used to teach me to shoot with a little BB gun, and I always wanted to shoot the real gun. And then he said, like, okay, if you can hit, I forget, it was like 3 bullseyes, I'll let you shoot a real gun. And he didn't think I could do it, but like, I practiced for like 2 weeks. I want to shoot a real gun. And I thought he was going to let me shoot his freaking 45 hand cannon, but he went and got a little 22 and let me shoot it. And so I don't think I shot another gun until I was probably in my 20s, but technically the first gun I shot, I was 7. And it wasn't child abuse because things were different in the 70s.
Well, I don't know about guns, but I did represent an arms manufacturer when I was
Really? Which one?
Remington.
Oh, okay.
When I was in New York, when I was at Denver Voice, had I not come out to DC, dude, I was going to be the top associate on this. This was 20 years ago, and I have to say, when it comes to guns, I have a more nuanced view. So it's not like you could be a conscientious objector to anything, really. But I was fine working on those cases back then. I don't know if I would be today. It depends. But this was 20 years ago, and yeah.
So I used to own stock in Smith & Wesson. Actually, I still do now. But it's a weird thing about guns. So if you go back, I think like to the 60s, more than half of U.S. households had a gun, but the average was like 2.1. And now less than 33%, I believe, of households have a gun, but the average is 7.2 guns per household. And that's the average. And remember the joke you told me about George Carlin, where he said, think of the dumbest person you know, and half the people are dumber than that?
You think about how dumb the average person is, and then realize half
the average person is, and half the people are dumber than that. So if the average person has 7.2 guns, there's half the people have more than that, right? And I don't know if you've ever watched this show, Doomsday Preppers, but some of these guys have like 200 guns, and they keep buying more. And some of them are like 400 pounds and have like type 2 diabetes and can barely get around, but they keep buying guns because they think like when the Russians come over that hill, the thing that's going to keep me from dying is like that one more gun. And if I had to take a bet, I bet it would be, coronary heart disease or high blood pressure, whatever. But they think it's because the Russians came over that hill and I didn't have one more gun. But to each their own.
Red Dawn. Another movie reference. Remember that? Red
Dawn. I remember that.
Red Dawn was one.
The remake was terrible.
But the original Red Dawn was one of the first PG-13 movies of all time, actually. The first or second. I think it was the first released, but the second to receive the rating, as I recall.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. But yeah.
That was a pretty low budget movie, but everyone in it went on to become a superstar. Jennifer Grey.
All the time. It didn't make any money, but then it would play on cable. It was one of those movies that was always on HBO back in the day.
Charlie Sheen. They all went on to become super big stars at the time.
There was just one HBO channel. Back in the early 80s.
When we grew up, there was no cable. You had to change the channel, and then HBO came out, and we were surprised that you can watch movies on a TV. And now there's like millions of channels on cable. YouTube is technically unlimited channels. Kids are spoiled today. I don't want to sound like Bob Simpson, but it's the truth.
With the internet, this is so. I was born in '73. So when did Porky's come out? '81. I don't know. Porky's came out, and it was like the movie that every little boy wanted to see. So. You want me to tell the story? Yeah, people can stop listening if they want. So I don't know. I was 8 years old. We had HBO. HBO at that point would only show R-rated movies at nighttime. It was between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. That was their rule. So it was the goal of my summer was figuring out how to watch this fucking movie because it had this shower scene. It had the shower scene that was just supposed to be epic. The word among 8-year-olds was this movie should be X-rated. We didn't know what X-rated meant, but it was no, it's, you see everything in the shower. And it was the shower scene that, and everyone knows what it is in Porky's at this point. So I At one point, I was I was the only one in the family. We had one of those huge VCRs. It's like one of those original VCRs that's huge, and you could set up the timers. But my parents didn't know how to do these timers. But we were going away for like a week with summer vacation, so I tried setting the timer to tape Porky's while we were away, but the channel had changed, so it didn't tape. So one time, it was like one day, and I looked at the whole schedule and I'm mapping it out. It was airing at like 4 a.m. So that was the perfect day. I was like, I'll get up at 4 a.m., I'll go downstairs and I'll watch this movie. That's exactly what I did. And I'm sitting there watching this movie with like sound really low. I'm in the basement. It wasn't, it was, I was in the den watching the movie. My father's getting up to get ready for work. I hear him moving around. When I think he's coming downstairs, I shut it off. But I actually I didn't understand any of the jokes, but I did see the shower scene. And, you know, it was a highlight of my youth. I'm recalling the story today. Like, yeah.
You know what? You might not have dropped out of the law if you had not seen that, because it warped your twisted little mind, and then you thought it grew straight, but like the foundation was off, and then that's why you quit being a lawyer.
My entire summer was dedicated to finding a way to watch this movie. Like when I was 8 years old, that was it. It was like when you think about like how can I do this? You know, work away with my parents, work around, and I did it though. I was pretty impressed.
Oh, I forgot to say, like and subscribe.
Oh yes,
so that
please like and subscribe, comment.
And for the next episode, we had a couple ideas. One was about this train derailment in New Palestine. So if somebody wants to see that, leave a comment. I don't think we want to do anything on the Alex Murdaugh case. There's so many people doing that, and it's so complicated. I don't know what we could add to that, but just leave a comment. And do you want to do trivia?
Sure. I'm terrible at it, but go for it.
You know what? Who? And I don't even know the answer to this, but I'm going to find out now. Who's the oldest Supreme Court justice? And I know it wasn't Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, you're talking in history, not right now. Not the oldest.
Ever, yeah.
The oldest Supreme Court justice ever. Okay, let's see. Well, Thurgood Marshall died on the bench, but maybe he was 89. How old was Oliver Wendell? Was Holmes? Oh God.
I can't name any of them, so I would have said Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but that would be wrong because she was like 80 something.
I'm going to say Thurgood Marshall, but I'm probably wrong.
You're wrong. You one of your guesses was correct though. Oliver Wendell Holmes, 1902 to 1932, was 90 when he retired from the court.
All right, so Holmes is my second guess.
Okay, you get part credit for that. And for those who don't know, Oliver Wendell Holmes is one of the more well-known Supreme Court justices. He served for a long time and he wrote a lot of landmark opinions. And I remember the name from law school, but I couldn't name more than 3 Supreme Court justices. So you got me there, Dave. But anyway, I think this has gone on for long enough. So like and subscribe. If you've got any hate, got any love, leave a comment.
Send the hate. It's fuel.
Yeah. Dave doesn't care what you think about his shirt. And we laugh about the insults. So it doesn't matter. If you want to say something nice, go ahead. You want to say something mean, go ahead.
We do appreciate compliments and kindness. Yeah. But it's so rare. It's unexpected.
Yeah. We laugh at the insults, but we appreciate the compliments. And if there's something you want to see in a future episode, go ahead and leave a suggestion below. I think we're going to do the New Palestine train wreck, but I have no interest in the Murdaugh thing because it's such a shit show.
It's just too complicated, I think, for a podcast. That's a series of podcasts, probably. But yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Even the train derailment is pretty complicated.
Yeah, I won't watch Rust when it's released, but I would watch the Alex Murdaugh serialized thing on Netflix. I don't want to see the actual case because it's long and drawn out, and I don't think the prosecutor or the defense attorney are very good. I thought in the the Darrow case, the prosecutor was good. The defendant who was representing himself was terrible. But this case, I don't think either side is very good. And it confirmed that for me when I heard Murdaugh was taking the stand. And it's like, if there's anyone you don't want taking the stand, it's a guy who is accused of murdering his wife and son and has defrauded so many clients for millions of dollars. And yeah, he should never go near the stand. So I don't think either of them are doing a good job, but I don't know that I could add anything to the commentary.
Regarding Rust, I think I probably will watch it out of curiosity, especially trying to figure out which scenes were filmed before or which were filmed after.
Yeah. So with Rust, you know, it was a live round, which I've said should never be on a set. But with the Crow that I mentioned, it was a squib. And so I think I mentioned how you make the dummy round. So apparently when they made the dummy round, one of the primers hadn't been fired. So when they shot, it was enough to knock the bullet out, but not enough for the bullet to come out of the gun. So the bullet got stuck in the gun. And then when they were shooting blanks, which again, blanks don't have a bullet, but have powder in it, the powder knocked the squib out, and that's what killed Brandon Lee.
Brandon Lee. And we should also point out that no one was charged in that incident.
Right.
Just to.
And yeah, so it's strange that 3 people were charged in this and no one was charged in the Brandon one, especially because they didn't buy dummy rounds from somebody. The armorer on that set made the dummy rounds himself because it was a low budget movie. And he made it the way I said to make it, where you take the bullet off, empty out the powder, shoot the primer, put a little BB in there so you know. But, you know, it's bad things can happen when you use firearms. So everyone be careful out there. And we'll see you guys next time. As I said, like and subscribe. I don't have Cookie Monster here, but, you know. All right, man. Great talking to you.
Awesome. Take care.
Before I go, I should have said this at the beginning, but none of this is legal advice. None of this. We're not your lawyers. If you have a legal problem, don't rely on anything you've heard in this podcast. This is entertainment and, you know, only
educational purposes.
Educational purposes, not legal advice. Don't rely on this. Talk to a real lawyer. Dave used to be a lawyer and he's not anymore. He's really good, but he's not a lawyer. I still am a lawyer, but I'm not very good. So don't listen to anything we said.
I think I still technically am a lawyer. I'm not an attorney, not a practicing attorney. I think you always remain a lawyer. Okay. I don't know, but it's all good.
You know, I just had to re-up my New York membership. So I was paying for 20 years for 2 licenses, and I'm like, why am I paying for 2? I'm only using 1. So New York doesn't have an option to do like inactive. So I just stopped paying, and then when I went to the website, it said delinquent. And just like, I just saw that word, and I was like, I was cringe, you know, because I picture like somebody Googling my name and telling my dad, what does delinquent mean? It says your son is a delinquent. So I paid the $400. Oh my God, F you, New York. But you got me again.
They still try to get me. Years later, they write me like, hey, come on back.
Yeah. All right. Well, great talking to you, man. I'll try to post this up soon.
Great. Take care.
All right.